how do you go from being a cool girl brand to really building a brand that lasts?
You can never stop moving and innovating and changing.
Rebecca Minkoff, you know the name, a force in the fashion industry.
This is fucking exciting. Like, I was fueled by it. You know, those early years where you're just like, oh my God, I'm making something, people are buying it, and I get to live in New York City. This bag is the symbol of I've made it. The best revenge is success. Grow a profitable business. It's okay if you're smaller or your growth is slower. And let me tell you, the margin matters. No is just the beginning of yes. There's going to be a yes somewhere, and you just keep knocking.
Rebecca Minkoff, welcome to Post Run High.
I'm so excited.
I am so excited for you to be here. So for a little bit of context, Rebecca and I went for a walk.
A fast walk.
A fast walk. I'm not even sure when.
Yes, I can tell you when. It was probably in September of last year, right before everything.
So normally we start this podcast after the activity, but this is a little bit of a delayed post-run, post-walk high, guys. Ever since then, I've been dying to sit down with you and just go way deeper on your story.
Let's do it.
I want to start off with what movement means to you and like how you stay active right now. And I was listening to a podcast you did recently where you said it was relatively recent that you started taking your health back and getting into weightlifting. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that journey.
Yes. So I think that during COVID, I started running in a serious manner. And it was at the time like my only way to get away from the kids and the full-timeness of work, chaos, and family. And I was like, 2 miles a day, that's what I'm going to do every day, 2 miles, 2 miles, 2 miles. And then after I had my last baby, like running for me was extraordinarily painful. I had a lot of pelvic floor issues and my knee was killing me. And I was like, I got to do something else. And I was also unable to lose the last 10 pounds of the baby weight, no matter what I did. I was watching what I was eating and I was still running. And I was just kind of doing a scroll of my own photos. And I was like, when did I look and feel my best? And I went back far enough that after my second baby, I was weightlifting a lot, not even a lot. I was doing it 2 days a week. And I was like, fuck it. I'm investing in a trainer and I got to attack it this way. So January of last year, 2024, started working with an incredible trainer 2 days a week and then doing the exercises he gave me for the remaining 4 days a week. And I just said an hour a day is what I'm going to do for myself. I'm also going to get my hormones tested and I'm just going to go back to just taking care of me first as a priority and see if anything changes. And everything changed after that. And so now, you know, I can't really run anymore. I can run for like, I don't know, probably a mile before my knee starts hurting. So for me, this is my new outlet and I love it.
It's nice hearing that. I love knowing that you got back into fitness too, like after having a baby. You have, how many kids do you have? 4 or 5?
I have 4 kids.
4 kids. Okay. So you got to have a little bit of an escape. And
Yes.
I feel that so much so with running. I feel like, I mean, obviously I run all the time for the show and personally, but it wasn't until I also started incorporating like weightlifting and sculpt classes and caring more about what I was putting into my body that I started seeing the results that I wanted. So I love knowing that about you. This podcast is all about movement, both in life, emotionally, physically, mentally. And you are such a good example of somebody that has just kept going and created something so big and so much bigger than yourself even.
Well, thank you.
I want to start at the beginning.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about what Rebecca was like as a kid and where you grew up.
So I grew up in San Diego. I was a kid that from the beginning when I saw, like my mom used to sell, this is weird, but she used to sell cast covers made by this triathlete. I don't know why he ventured into cast covers, but he thought it'd be cool to cover them with like stretchy fabric. So she would sell those at the San Diego flea market. And when I saw that she had a stand there, I was like, I want to sell something too. And so we kind of had a rule in my house, like she would never buy me the actual item, but she would buy me the supplies. So she bought me the supplies to make my own jewelry and my own puffy paint or like sweatshirts. And I would set up next to her on a card table at the flea market and sell. And I sold nothing. But the lead up every week to like what I was going to make and all that was so fun and exciting that I think that's when I got my first taste of creation and the joy that can bring. And then from there, I wanted a dress. She refused to buy it for me. She's like, but I'll teach you how to sew. And then I loved the idea that I could create, you know, a garment from my imagination. So kind of followed that, became very serious about the craft, had a teacher that was like, oh, a designer from New York. She wasn't really a designer. She was but she knew how to sew. She knew how to teach me sketching and all this stuff. And I just became obsessed with it. And as a gangly, unconfident, nerdy, awkward teenager / youth, to be able to take matters into my own hands and make my clothing fit me gave me a huge source of confidence. And so that was something that I was like, I love this. It fuels me with joy. I was also a dancer, so I was kind of parallel pathing both. And then in high school, I had to sort of make this decision that was not forced upon me, but the dance teachers were constantly like, you're too tall, your boobs are too big, you throw off the symmetry, go be in the costume department. And I was like, okay, I guess that's where I'm going to live. And that unfortunate situation turned into something that really then I became serious about design.
And you went to a performing arts high school, right?
Yes.
So I love knowing that your parents really fostered this creativity in you from a young age. Like, it's so cool having supportive parents that see something in you in that way. And they're like, let's let Rebecca do this full force.
Yeah.
When do you feel like you started really finding your style and figuring out what fashion meant to you?
Ooh, I think that's never, I don't know that there's one moment where you find it. I think you're just always evolving. And if you look back, you always think you found it. And then you're like, oh my God, that's so cringe.
Like, do you feel like, could you look back at a picture of yourself from high school and say like, oh, that's a Rebecca Minkoff outfit?
Oh my gosh. So my prom, I made this red shift dress, very, I would say if I was comparing it to a brand now, like Totem or Kite, it was like a bright red shift dress, but like modern, kind of like sleek Calvin Klein lines. And I would say that's necessarily my brand, but it was edgy for a prom dress because it was just simple and bright and not like a puffy, like, I don't know. So maybe then.
If you guys are enjoying this episode, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps more people discover these conversations and it helps us continue bringing on amazing guests. At 18, you ended up moving to New York City. From our conversation on the run / walk, you had said that you enrolled for a semester at FIT.
Yeah.
But did you initially move to New York City thinking you would do that? Or did that enrollment come after moving?
That enrollment came after moving. I was already working for this designer. I was a paid intern. And my parents were very untraditional. They were like, if you want to go to college, great, you can pay for it. If you don't, you can start working. Like, either way, we're not helping you, but you can do your thing. But my aunt was very traditional. And she was like, if you don't go to college, like you're going to be homeless, essentially. Like, no one's going to hire you and you'll never amount to anything. And she was living here. And she was in my head enough that I was like, okay, like, I guess I'll try it and see what happens. And so that's what sort of got me started. Okay, I need to enroll in college because otherwise I'll be homeless.
And that's hard when you have somebody that like is living in New York, is a New Yorker telling you that. You're like, well, my parents are telling me that I should pursue what I want to pursue, but you're telling me this. Like, that must have been hard.
It was hard. Luckily, I didn't feel like, thank God she was my aunt. And I was like, I can listen to her, but she's not the boss of me. Like, if it was my parents. And I enrolled and it was great, but I was sitting around like, I learned this already. I spent 4 years at a performing arts high school where 3 hours of my day, every day, was learning the craft of sewing and draping and pattern making. And so in your first semester at a school, like, you're still learning the basics. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, can we skip ahead? And we couldn't. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to work. Like, I can't handle night classes and working. Let's just focus on what I came here for. And so I said, I'm out.
It's so interesting knowing that in high school they taught you those things, because when I was in high school, I went to just my public high school, but I would take classes at FIT for fashion design and like visual merchandising. And we started learning some of those basics, but I always was like, oh, like, you go to college to learn kind of the rest of it and like the real foundational skills. But it is so interesting knowing that you basically moved to New York City already having known all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I could have definitely used a business class or like a math class, like fashion math class. That would have been really helpful.
You went from cool designer to literally like a businesswoman, you know, and that is a big shift and a big
Huge
jump.
shift.
In 2001, you launched your first own piece.
Yes.
The I Love New York t-shirt.
So it was part of a 5-piece collection. My big show, which I just found pictures of, was September 10th, 2001. That was like, yeah, it was a group show. I was like, this is it. I'm going to make it. Everyone's going to see my 5-piece collection. And, I'm going to be the hottest designer in New York City. Not that anyone was there at the show in attendance to make those decisions. So I didn't have a business plan. I was like, I think at the time it was have a fashion show and then buyers come. And then, that was kind of the format. So I had a lookbook that I was going to be sending out to everybody, to different stores around the city. And I think that was step one, like get an account, get a store. And then September 11th, the next morning happened. And so that really changed everything in a way that obviously no one could imagine. But I was like, okay, I'm not starting a brand today, And so it became really about immediately what can I do to support the city? And I was like, I'm going down to St. Vincent's. Like, that's where they're bringing people. Like, let's see what we can do to help and support. And so that's where I sort of stationed myself until I eventually was down at the site helping first responders. And so for 2 weeks, that's all I did is I was going down there. Eventually they got officialized and you couldn't go down there. But up until that point, we were getting water, supplies, food for anything to help the first responders, like rest, recover, and go back. And so I didn't even think about business at that time. I was just like, this city's been through something so traumatic. And that's all I wanted to do was help. And then my boss was like, if you want to have a job here, you need to come back to work. And I was like, okay, I'll go back to work. And at that moment for me, it had changed. I was like, no longer interested in that in the way that I was before. And I think she could see that. And then coincidentally, long story, I'd already been seeding the collection out. And so I sent it to an actress on September, probably I shipped it to her on the 9th. And she wore it about 3 weeks later on Jay Leno, the I Love New York shirt. And then that's what kind of broke everything open.
Yeah. And I think something really interesting about the I Love New York shirt from knowing that 9/11 experience, like I didn't realize that was such a big part of your launch, around that, because it makes me think a little bit about during COVID, there was a brand that went crazy, New York or Nowhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's some synergies here in terms of like the emotion that your I Love New York shirt probably evoked for people, right? When something so traumatic happens. And, I was very young when 9/11 happened, but my dad was working in the city in finance. I don't have early memories of it, but it was very traumatic for our small town that was, on a train line into the city. A lot of dads passed away.
Yep.
And people, men and women that worked, that lived in our town. So but I would imagine that when you launched this I Love New York shirt, people were probably so excited to wear something that represented their city.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what fueled it. Is it became the, again, pre-social media, pre-anything, like the magazines were running that shirt over and over again. And so people were like, what can I do? I can wear that shirt. The proceeds are going to the Red Cross. Let me support the city. And it was crazy. It's all I did. I would bike down to Canal Street. I would go buy at retail a batch of these shirts. I'd go home, tie them up, do my thing, bedazzle them, sell them for, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks more than I bought them for. Like really poor business planning because that was not sustainable.
Right.
And then I'd bike down to the one nascent e-commerce site that was carrying it called Rebecca, and she would sell it. And then that was my first, e-commerce site. And then she was like, all right, can we add to the collection now? And I was like, oh yeah, we can do this top and this one. And so that was kind of the true beginnings of the brand.
You must have been buying a ton of I Love New York shirts, like literally maybe buying out some of these shops on Canal Street, right?
Yes.
So after Jenna Elfman wears it on the late night show, I'm sure the orders started pouring in. Like, how were you guys able to keep up with all the orders?
She would just call me every day, Jill from Ravensstyle, and she'd be like, we got 10 more, we got 15 more, like keep it up. And I didn't have funding or a source of this. And clearly with my terrible business math, the 10 to 15 bucks more wasn't sustainable. And so I literally said to Jill, I was like, I need an advance. Like if the orders are going to be this way, like give me some money to like go buy the shirts. And she did, which was really generous of her. And she didn't have to do that. And so with her $150 check, I would go negotiate then a little bit with the vendor. My favorite vendor who had the best quality was on the corner of Canal and Green, which is now a fancy store. But That's where he would be. And like every other day I'd go buy shirts. And that's all I did for about 9 months was make those shirts.
I think it's amazing knowing that it all started by really being like a non-for-profit, like donating the proceeds
Yes.
to the Red Cross.
Minus my rent, yes. And
Minus
some ramen.
Right. There you go. That's fine though. She's allowed to eat and sleep, guys. You were hustling.
And when I tell you, like, I lived in what was a closet. Like it was an apartment, but the room that I had was a closet and it was a mattress on crates so that I could have some storage underneath. It was by no means glamorous living.
I did want to ask you like what your life was like when you were living in the city, like trying to make it work.
Scrappy. But I remember sitting outside on the fire escape of this closet / apartment. And I was like, I've made it. Like no part of me was like, oh, I have a shitty room. And oh my gosh, like I can't eat and I can't go out to eat. Like, not that I can't eat, but I can't go out. I was just like, this is fucking exciting. Like I was fueled by it. You know, those early years where you're just like, oh my God, I'm making something. People are buying it and I get to live in New York City. Like how awesome is this?
Fireworks were probably going off inside of you because like without really knowing it, like at the time your career was taking off. So the universe was like, boop, boop, like it's coming, you know?
Yeah.
But oh my God, yeah, I remember those years of not being able to go out or like being out to dinner with my friends in my early 20s and being like, I'm just getting a drink. Like I'm not going to participate in the dinner.
I would have to do that all the time. Or when everyone's like, let's split the check. I'm like, I just had a salad.
Yeah.
I actually just had a soda. And then I remember that like people are like, what's success mean to you? And I'm like, in the early days, success meant that I didn't have to do that anymore.
Yes. I literally just got chills because same success to me was literally being able to put my credit card down with a group of my friends and being like, let's all split the bill.
Yeah. Yes.
Like that is such a transformation that I feel like isn't talked about enough, but it is such a thing. And it's hard to make it in New York City, but the people that do, it's just so impressive. And
yeah.
I know your brother was a big part of Rebecca Minkoff. He was your co-founder.
Yes.
At what point did he come on? Did it take some convincing also? Like I have two brothers and one of them loves being involved in what I do. The other one isn't going to touch it with a 10-foot pole,
yeah.
you know? So like, what was that like for you?
So I very much have the same thing. One brother is completely and never been a part of the business and just likes to clap and cheer me on. I was 4 years into the business. It was 2005. Yes, 2005. And I had the clothing line. That's all I was pursuing. I had just decided, let me do one bag. Jenna came back to me and she said, I'm going to be in this film. Do you make bags? And I lied to her and I said, yes, I do. And I had 2 weeks to make a bag. Again, I feel like sometimes I'm trying to shorten these stories up, but
no, keep it long.
Okay. So I did the bag. FedEx didn't deliver it on time to set. It did not make it into the movie. I was devastated. I was not making money in my clothing business. I was going into debt on a credit card and I was about $60,000 in debt and I didn't know how I was going to pay it. And if anyone's like, how did she get a credit card that let her go $60,000 in debt? By no means was my dad willing to pay for the credit card, but he had co-signed it. So he was like, I'm not sure how you're going to get out of this one. Like I put my name on this, big mistake of mine, but like you're on the hook for the money. So it was a very stressful time because now I was out $1,800. I was basically like the last of the credit line. And then the bag didn't make the movie. So I was like, cool. I guess I have a bag. Now I'm going to start wearing it and I'll just not, I guess I'll go back to clothing. And enough women stopped me on the street that they were like, who's the bag? Where can I get the bag? Oh my God, I love it. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. So I said to my friend, Ilaria, she was the buyer for a really hot store in LA. I said, what do you think of this bag? She's like, I'm obsessed with it. I'm buying it for the store. And I'm going to connect you to this woman named Crystal, who's the writer for Daily Candy. And Daily Candy at the time was like the newest, hottest, latest thing in your inbox. You looked forward to getting an email from them every day. And whatever they wrote about went viral. And so that happened. And when that happened, it was like explosive, like with inbound orders and growth and requests. And that's when I said to my dad, I was like, okay, I'm not a loser. Finally, after 4 years of struggling, like there's wind at my sails. And can you loan me some money? Because now I really need it. And the credit card is done. And he was like, no, call your brother. And that was the beginning of that relationship. And so my brother asked me a lot of business questions that I didn't know half the answers to. And then he's like, all right, I'll help you. And then he loaned me the first $2,500 to like make the first, or second production order. And when he could see the numbers going, like, okay, I'm back for more. Here's your check. I'm back for more. He's like, oh, this thing is actually on fire. And he felt like he had the business acumen to sort of help steer it.
When I hear things that like connect with me, I'm like, oh, it's like
Yeah.
lights a spark. Was your dad saying to you, nobody's going to help you with this $60,000 credit card bill except yourself? Like in order to make it, you need people like that in your life that are going to say that to you. Like, this is your thing to dig yourself out of, and
Yeah.
you can do it. When I started my running interview show, I was literally buying people sneakers off the streets of New York. And I racked up my credit card bill buying people sneakers, but I just knew in my gut that like we were doing something, and having these conversations was so much more than just running. We were having conversations that moved people and like were moving me. So I was like, it's going to work. It's all going to work out. I'm going to pay it off. And we ended up partnering with brands like New Balance and Adidas who would fulfill those orders for us. But it was by taking that risk and then having to have that hustle to make it happen after I took that risk that made it happen. So it's cool knowing that you have that experience too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that weighed over me for a long time. That like, oh my gosh, this is the most amount of money like in the world. And I don't know what the solution's going to be to pay it off.
I mean, $60,000 for a 21-year-old, that's like literally being like, I'm buying a drink at dinner and not getting the full meal. It's a crazy amount of money to fathom.
Yes.
But it's amazing knowing that when you made it work, you made it work. And I know a big part of your business early on, I loved hearing about how you would hustle to get the bag on celebrities, right?
Oh, yes.
And I saw that in 2005, I think it was, Lindsay Lohan wore your morning after bag.
Yes.
Is that when the bags really took like on a new life?
I think it was her. It was the whole rise of reality TV was just beginning. So Kristen Cavallari, Lauren Conrad, and then there was a slew of other celebrities like Reese Witherspoon and Jessica Alba. So this combination of like these A-list celebrities, these burgeoning reality TV stars, just propelled the bag into this like it girl bag. Like you go to New York, this bag is the symbol of I've made it. And that's making it on many different levels. Your first job, your first raise. It's not like making it like, now I can pay my $60,000 off making it.
On that note, I loved that you said it girl, because there's literally no better it girl in my mind than the early 2000s it girls. So like first let's talk about who the Rebecca Minkoff girl was at that time, like who was wearing your bag.
Yeah.
And I know that can be like a multifaceted answer. And then I want to talk about it girls.
Who was wearing the bag? So the bags at that time, 2005, 2006, were sold in the best boutiques in New York City. I mean, we're really going back in time here, but whether it was Searle or Big Drop or Satine, there were just some great boutiques. Like that was its time to shine. Sex and the City was like the big TV show. So like women were reclaiming like this confidence and having an all-nighter and sleeping with a guy and doing that walk of shame, but it wasn't a walk of shame. It was like, yeah, girl, I got laid last night or whatever it is. And so the bag was part of that zeitgeist. And so women wearing the bag were like the ones I mentioned. And then there were just tastemakers wearing it, editors. There was just this cool woman who was really confident and powerful, but she wasn't buying the bag because it like showed everyone how much she spent on it. Or because she could flaunt like how much money she had. She was really buying it because it was timeless. It was something that like showcased and celebrated her style, but wasn't about a logo. And I think that was also a kind of a new thing that was happening within fashion.
Absolutely. It's so interesting thinking about how fashion and culture really go hand in hand with each other. And it's cool to know like how in tune you were with that.
Yeah.
How did the it girls of the early 2000s compare and differ from the girls of today?
I would say that because there was no social media, the it girls were all sort of agreed upon by everybody. Like we all knew it was Kate Moss, Sienna Miller, Paris and Nicole, Lindsay Lohan. Let's just say that was a crew. But because the magazines and that was it, magazines and websites were like, this is who it is. Everyone was like, oh, that's who it is. Now you could have your own set of it girls and I could have my own set and they're completely different. I still am shocked to discover someone who I've never heard about, never seen. And I'm like, oh, 4.5 million followers. Who the fuck are you? But they're an it girl to whoever is following them. And so now it's like everyone has their own version of who that is. And so it's very spread out. And then there's obviously like the Hailey Biebers, like she's everyone's it girl.
And
So
she would have been an it girl, I'm sure, in the early 2000s as well.
100%. So it's like a pyramid, I guess now. More, with
Yeah.
the ones we all know, and then
And then there's like all these little microcosms on the internet.
all
That's
these
why the internet is
universes.
so wild, because there's so many different
It's a
there's so many
wild
different
place.
aesthetics too that you're right, like have their own people. And when I think of like Y2K it girls, I literally think of like the old fashioned tabloids and crop tops and like the low
Yeah.
rise jeans and like the shiny glasses.
Oh my God, so much of that. What's funny is my daughter, she's 10, and so she didn't grow up with these magazines, but when she sees them, she's like, "Oh my God, Mom, it's like Instagram, but like a book." And I'm like, that's so crazy that's you have the complete warped idea. But yes, it is Instagram in a book form.
Like that is the cutest thing. Obviously Rebecca Minkoff took off in the early 2000s, but you have stood the test of time. How do you go from being a cool girl brand to really building a brand that lasts?
Reinvention, risk taking, and your podcast is all about movement. You can never stop moving and innovating and changing. And that can also be exhausting. I think I talk about Madonna, like she constantly reinvented herself to keep her music and her style fresh. And I think that while our aesthetic, we want to remain the same. So like the brand promise is always the same to a woman. You have to find new ways to engage her and storytell and keep it fresh, because someone can be like, "Oh, I used to have you." And you're like, "Well, look at me now. I'm coming back to you in this way and this way." So it's a lot to keep the same conversation going for 20 years. And I think it's constantly, and then not being afraid to try new things. Like we were constantly trying to figure out how to be in front of our customer in different ways through technology, through innovation. And you just are trying a lot of stuff all the time.
When somebody asks you to describe Rebecca Minkoff, what is the way you've always described the brand?
I think that from an aesthetic point of view, you're a little bit rock and roll, you're a little bit bohemian. There's that midline between masculine and feminine. Sexy tomboy would be a way I could describe it. And I think that, for a girl who wants a little bit of edge, we give her that. But she's not so edgy that she's like goth, not that kind of edge. But I think there's still a warmth to the brand. There's still an approachability. And so you get that mixture of elements that I think is a duality that a lot of women have.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love the term sexy tomboy. That's totally how I feel when I see your brand.
Yeah.
Is there any business mistake that you made early on?
Oh my gosh.
That you always think back on and you're like, I just want any new founders and brand builders to know this and not make the same mistake that I did.
Yeah. So there is a drug now called venture capital. And I think early on, we made the decision when we got our first investment to just grow at all costs, and the margin didn't matter. And let me tell you, the margin matters. Grow a profitable business. It's okay if you're smaller or your growth is slower. Within the fashion industry, I can't speak for other industries. I think if you can build that stable ground, the decisions you make as a business will be so much better. And your stability will be so much better. And I think, looking back at our mistakes, we just were hooked on what everyone else was doing, which is just grow at all costs and figure out profitability later. And it took a really long time to get profitable. And then world events happened that you weren't in control of, that then made all that effort and progress go away.
And I feel like the world of branding too has changed so much. It's like so important to like keep your finger on the pulse with what's going on. And you guys have done such a good job doing that. And like you have such an amazing team around you too.
It's definitely a team. You can't do it alone. You are not the like end all be all of it all. It's a team effort, and it's people who believe in the vision and see it. I have an amazing CEO who's been with the brand for 8 years. I have an amazing creative director who's been with me for 19 years. And so, we have an amazing group of women that are just there and dedicated, and I couldn't do it without any of them.
In 2022, you guys ended up selling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a conversation with another founder who sold his business called The Morning Brew.
Mm-hmm.
He built it for 7 years. Sold it when he was 28. He's somebody that's actually not involved anymore with the business. I know you're still very involved with Rebecca Minkoff. But it's an emotional decision. He described it as it's a really emotional decision to sell your business. Was it emotional for you to say, okay, I'm ready to sell?
So it was still COVID times, or the end of COVID. We had basically come back from the brink of almost not making it as a business. And we were actually in a great spot. We were like, everything's going our way now. The business is back to growth. We saw the end of the tunnel. We saw the light. And then supply chain issues hit at the end of 2021. We couldn't get any goods. We got 3,000 of 300,000 units for our fourth quarter is the biggest part of our business where we do the most volume.
Like holidays and yeah.
Also fall. Like fall is when someone's buying a leather bag. You're not necessarily buying a leather bag at the height of summer when you're sweating to death. So we were like, oh, we're fucked. If I can swear on this podcast.
You can swear.
Now
You
we're
can swear.
fucked. And so we realized that we needed a big muscle who had the infrastructure to be able to negotiate with a factory or get us to the front of the line or prioritize us. Because if you think about who our competitors are, they're billion-dollar brands who can get to the front of the production line. And so we were able and fortunate enough to find a partner who had that muscle. And so it was emotional in that it was a great opportunity, but also like, oh my gosh, we wish we had had the might at that moment, but our hands were tied in terms of being able to get goods. And so the day that the like ink was wet, it was February of 22, was like a day that I was uncontrollably crying out of happiness and fear because you don't know what's next, and we knew everything was changing. I knew that the office I shared with my brother he wasn't going to come to work the next day, or a month later.
So your brother left after the sale.
He decided, well, the new company said, we have a CEO. We don't necessarily need that role. And I think my brother was tired. It had been a lot, like 20 plus years, but also being the CEO and steering through COVID and what we had to go through, like that was a lot. And it was a lot for everybody, but I think he carried it the most on his shoulders. And he's like, I think I'm good. I think I'm going to go. So that was weird to be like, oh, wait, we built this together and then you're not here anymore. So it was definitely like a day of like, like you're crying, you're smiling, but and that lasted for a couple weeks. And then I was like, okay, this is what the new era is going to be. And it started to feel really good.
What does the new era look like for you now and how has it changed?
So the silver lining has been, I didn't realize how much of my attention was always wrapped up in things that I'm not good at. Business needs, crises, we're not going to make the delivery because we can't get the goods or the leather stuck in Italy or whatever it is. I don't have to worry about that now. Someone else does. And so for me, I've been really able to focus on what I love best, design, community, social, overseeing the PR. And that's where I thrive. And so to be able to have all that attention back and like putting it into that for the last, how many years has it been? 2 years, has been really a joy. The hard part is at the end of the day, like if I have an idea or I want to do something and the answer is no, I will push back because that's just my nature. But sometimes the answer is still really no. Or when we first moved into our new offices and I was like, oh, this is not, it's mine in my heart, but it's not mine. And I had a panic attack and I had to leave the office and I actually walked from 39th Street all the way to Dumbo. Just to like, be like, okay, this is truly someone else's, but it's my name, it's my legacy, it's what I love to do. So where else am I going to go? And until I have a better answer, like I'm sticking around.
And it's your name. So you want it to
I wanted to succeed.
Yeah, of course.
And my brother and I, him 17 years, me 20. Like that's not just something I can just be like, all right, that was fun. Bye.
No, you'll never be able to do that. You'll never be able to. No. And Rebecca Minkoff as the brand, like we need you there. We want you there,
Yeah, people are like, well, are you going to leave when your contract's up? I'm like, what else am I going to go do? Okay. Like this is my name and people identify. It's not like a faceless brand. I'm deeply embedded in it. And so like, I don't want to leave, but also like, it would be weird if I did, I think, for the brand.
Looking back at those early years and the grit and the hustle that went into building this company, what do you miss the most about those early days? And for new founders out there listening, what do you want them to stop and like enjoy about the grind that they're in?
I miss these moments that, setting up our first trade show, I rented a zip car. We couldn't afford to have the people that you pay, I don't know, $5,000 to build it. So I have a zip car filled with everything you need to build a trade show. And I'm hiring these like random guys off the street to like build it. And then we figured out if we played the same songs that Apple had in their commercials, our booth was always packed, because back then Apple Music, when they would launch their new phone or their new product and they had the trendiest, coolest song playing, I was like, that's the playlist. And so that feeling of like, I just figured out a cheat code, and then your booth is full and people are writing orders, and we would have these incredible Japanese customers, and they would come and you'd sit with them for an hour because they're very exact and they had their measuring tape and their whiteout and their little kit. And they'd hand you a $50,000, $60,000 order, and you're just like, nothing gets better than this. And so the thing that I want to say to founders is, do not say it's going to be good when. Like, enjoy every single part of it now, because the pot of gold at the end isn't always a pot of gold. It's experience, it's going through this. Like, enjoy all these moments to growth and building, because I used to have this dumb idea, like, in 20 years, I'll be able to relax and put my feet up and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself all day. That's not the end goal of this. I'm excited to go to work every day. I'm excited for what me and the team are doing. And that's success to me.
As somebody now 20 years later, guys, she's still working a lot. Not only are you working, you've taken on even more projects than just building your brand. Was there like a Rebecca Minkoff uniform that you would wear all the time back in the day that was like so you? Like, what were you walking onto the streets of New York wearing?
Oh gosh. Well, in the early days, girls were layering their tank tops. So you'd have two. It was low rise, flared jeans, and flip flops, which apparently are making a comeback. I found that out yesterday. And a bra, like a brightly colored bra so you could see the straps. That was like 2005-ish. A juicy, in the fall months, a juicy like fur lined sweatshirt, which I got off eBay, so it's probably not real. As my style evolved, I was definitely like, I don't know, I started incorporating a lot of more black into my wardrobe. Now it's very rare that I'm wearing color.
I know, you're so colorful today.
I was like, it's summer.
Wait, I just want to paint the picture really quickly. So when Rebecca showed up, she was in an activewear outfit because she was like, are we going to go for a run first? And I'm like, no, we already walked. Like, let's just do the podcast.
Yeah.
And so she changed into the cutest outfit and you walked in and I was like, oh my God.
It's a shock. It's a shock.
But even your activewear outfit was cute. Anyways.
Thank you. So I would say I wanted to, I don't know. I think I started embodying what the brand is, which is like this, like, I don't like to say I'm sexy, but like a sexy tomboy. Like, if I'm going to have on a mini dress, it's with an oversized blazer, so I think it's that, again, that mixture of that elements and, yeah. And then I won't say I didn't embrace taking more risk, ironically, until I was pregnant with my fourth child. And my creative director at the time was like, you need to dress pregnancy style like Rihanna. Like, look at what she's doing. Like, show the bump, celebrate it, embrace the bigger boobs and the short shorts. And I was like, fuck it. This is my last kid. And that's when I really started. I feel like, not that I went so out of anyone's comfort zone, but I went out of my comfort zone. And I feel like I'm trying to stay there.
Yeah, I think that's a fun thing to do, especially as somebody that loves fashion. And I'm sure like experimenting with different brands too. You've built a brand through so many different eras. Maybe thinking about what's in trend now and what's not in trend. What are certain things that you want to see come back from the years?
Oh my gosh. What do I know? There's too much that's already back. I watched a girl stuff her Jinko jeans with like an entire day's worth of needs. And I was like, do I want that? No, I don't want that. Or like a baby tee, or like, I love a juicy sweatsuit, but like, I like the older version, not the newer ones. But I also think there's some things like low rise that can just stay. It can stay for the girls who haven't had kids yet. I think for the most part, once you've had a baby, like, you're never going to go back to having low rise pants ever again.
Also, I think one of the cool things too about building your brand was you have a family of 4. When did you have your first baby?
I was 31. I was technically in my heart not ready, but I also had my mom in my ear being like, your ovaries are turning to dust. You need to get pregnant or you will be infertile soon. And I knew that I wanted my children to have a long relationship with my parents because I think they're fantastic. So I was like, fine, let's just try it. And I remember being pregnant and texting my husband and being like, I don't know why we did this. This was a huge mistake. I'm not ready to be responsible for a human. Like, I'm still selfish. How am I going to give all this up? And when my son came, I was like, why the fuck didn't we do this sooner? This is the best thing we've ever done. And so that flip happened overnight. And then I was like, I love being a mom in a way that I never thought I would. And then I was like, let's just keep going. And we really thought we were done at 3. And then COVID was over. We had sold the company. I felt like a renewed passion because I was able to focus on what I love. And then I just looked at my husband. I was like, we're not done. He's like, we're done. I was like, oh no, we're not. And so I might have lied to him to get pregnant with the 4th.
When you said, let's just keep going, it just gave me Kris Jenner vibes in the best way. Like I could picture her saying that, like, let's keep it up. I love like having babies. How did your work life change once you had kids? I think there's so many working moms out there and you're such an example of somebody that hustles so hard. So what did that look like for you?
So prior to having kids, I worked at the office till 10 every night. We worked all weekends. A big part of our success was after work. Most times my brother and I and our president at the time would go out to dinner and like talk about strategy and growth. And that was really critical. When I had the baby, all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to be home at 6 and he's going to come to me. I'm a big breastfeeder. So he's going to come to me for a feeding during the day. And then I'm going to be home at 6. And like, that's the new life. And that was a really hard adjustment for my relationship with my brother working because we were so used to having these like late night strategy sessions. But also like at the time and for the first 3 children, it was really hard. And I didn't realize this till later, but like it was really hard to turn off because I'd be in at bath time, but thinking about all the stuff that's happening when your business is growing as much as it was. And I was constantly trying to find that balance that does not exist, you know? And for me, that meant, oh, I'm going to Korea and China twice a year. Well, the kid's coming with me. And the nanny's coming with me because I'm still breastfeeding and I want to see my child and I refuse to leave them for 2 weeks at a time. And so what are you sacrificing at that point? Sleep, friendship, going out with girlfriends. I see this woman on Instagram who takes 1 million girl trips and I'm like, not my life, you know, I'll do that when my kids are older. And so I think it was me sort of with each kid experimenting where am I comfortable and where am I not? And how do I put the new boundaries in? And sort of also putting blinders on to like how other women are doing it because you have to figure it out for yourself and it changes. And it wasn't until I had my 4th baby with a sold business, older, wiser, whatever, that I was like, wow, I thought I was present, but I was so distracted. And now I can really say that I'm much more present as a mom in that moment. Like when we're playing with Legos, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not like, oh, the email needs to go out. And, you know, it's one of those things that like, it's hard to give advice because when you're in that moment of build, you can't tell someone, hey, go only think about that.
I think what's so cool about you is you're showing that you can be a great mom while also running businesses, you know?
You can. You have to rely on your team a lot. You know, we can't do it alone.
One of the things you said that I loved was late night brainstorming sessions with your brother.
Yeah.
I have a twin brother and an older brother. The one who like loves talking business with me is my twin. And like, he loves just knowing what I have going on. I don't know whether it's because he works in finance and he just finds what I do. He must have like some sort of like creative, part of him. And he definitely does, but he just loves it. And the late night sessions, it's like, I love talking to my fiance about what I'm doing and we have such good sessions, but nothing beats a conversation with your brother and your family that just want you to win more than anything.
Yeah. Those were fun. Those were like, we did that for whatever, 6 years, you know? And it was just like, that's when you would like the day-to-day emergencies or whatever would stop and we would like really build the future and foundation of the business.
I love when founders have a voice and want to have an impact and like help other people and be a mentor. It's not that it's rare, but at the same time, it kind of is, you know? So like, when did you decide you wanted to have a voice and give people advice and your wisdom?
I think that I had always felt very alone within the fashion industry. because it was very competitive. It was very cutthroat, and there was not a lot of support of women helping women. So I was already like, this sucks that we're all so worried about the business and like you're taking a share that we're not going to support each other. I hated that. And when I began to peer outside of that, just craving other connection, I was like, oh my gosh, other women need this and other women are struggling. And I just was like, there has to be a way to like bring a community of people together. At the same time, I wanted to improve culture within my company. And we had a store in New York and in LA. And I said, let me bring in these women now that I'm connecting with and give an opportunity for my employees and, customers to hear from them. And that felt great, but it also felt like we can make this wider. So that was kind of the birth of the podcast. And ironically, Female Founder Collective around the same time was, we need a community. We need access to each other. We need to hear about what worked, what didn't, what could be the shortcuts, if any. And then what are we running into as founders that's truly stopping us from succeeding? And when I brought my co-founder, Allison White, on, she was really like, we need to showcase that women can teach each other. Like, you don't have to go back to school or you go to Wharton and get your MBA. Like, we can help bridge that gap. And so it's really become about community education and helping women make more money, because we know that that's going to change things, not just for ourselves, but like in communities.
I love that you created communities that bring women together that want to support women, because there's certain cliche terms. One is community and the other is women supporting women.
Yeah.
And I think community is an overused word.
Mm-hmm.
And I think women supporting women is an overused term. And
Yeah.
I think very few people actually know what that means and are actually capable of doing it.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to women that don't support women?
Ooh, you're not my friend. And there's the women that say it and then they fake it. And this is what I don't like. This doesn't mean that if you're get into a fight with a woman, you don't then suddenly support women. Or like if someone's coming for you and you stand up for yourself, that you don't support women. I think at the end of the day, it's what can you do to help another person further along their business or something in their career, with some advice, a resource, an introduction. That's supporting another woman.
And genuine excitement for them
Correct.
when they do something, stepping out of their comfort zone or.
Yeah. And like, I would never sit here and say, oh, she has a handbag brand, I can't help her because she's going to take some of my business. I was just on the phone with a up and coming woman who has a beautiful handbag brand. And I was like, what do you need? You want to go into wholesale? Well, here's everything you should be scared of. I'm not losing by doing that. Like you can't just be the one greatest best. And I think that I grew up in this culture of that cutthroatness, and it annoyed me and it angered me and it happened to me. And I'm just like, this is not the way. And if we could, sometimes, there are some women that like blame men for the lack of progress. And I'm like, it's a lot of women doing it to each other that's just as impactful of stopping our own progress.
When it comes to certain things, I think it's more.
Like my husband, sometimes he's like, you will cut a bitch. Like when I'm even talking about someone or something, and I'm like, yeah. And then we do that to each other and it's never good.
There's this term that I heard somebody say like years ago and it's always stuck with me. It was actually Hailey Bieber. We've talked about her twice. Hey, she has a show called like Who's in My Bathroom, and I forget the guest that she had on.
She has a show where on YouTube?
She had it. I don't know if she still does it.
Okay.
I hope she brings it back because it was such a good idea and it was so well done. And she said, I think more people have to realize that there is space for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a big world and you can find your space.
It's a huge world and you can still be competitive, but you don't need to be like a cunt about it. Like.
That was an iconic one-liner. You don't have to be a cunt about it.
I get inspired, but like, I don't get jealous. I get inspired. And it's a real difference. Like when you're watching someone have success, you're like, oh, I want that. How did she do that? Not like, oh, I have to take her down so I can take it from her. And I think that shift is also a much healthier mindset to be in.
On your podcast, you interview a lot of CEOs, founders, influential people. Is there a common thread that you have found through your conversations that you think is a key to why these people made it?
They don't give up. They're like those dolls that just like you hit them and they come back up, or those boxing figures, they just keep going. and they don't let the word no stop them. And I think if you want to make it, you've got to get over that. You have to be like, no is just the beginning of yes. Rebecca said, no is just, okay, no, there's going to be a yes somewhere, and you just keep knocking.
What is something you've seen firsthand about the power of women supporting women in business? Is there an experience you had that you were like, this is why we need to be supporting each other and pushing each other to grow?
I mean, there's been small things like seeing within our female founder collective community, like 2 co-founders got together because of it and launched a business. Or even we ran an accelerator program for 50 women-owned businesses during COVID. They've now gone on to raise, we taught them how to fundraise, we taught them how to scale with those investments. They've raised over $40 million because of the accelerator that we ran. That's an incredible statistic, especially at a time when women receive 2% of venture funding. And all those women are still in touch, and they're also helping each other. And it's just the testament of like, when you put aside the competition part to help another person, then you all get to grow. You all benefit from it.
There's almost this stigma of like, you have to be so confident and you have to believe so hard that like what you're doing is going to work. But I think there's also something really beautiful about like being in a community of people where you can be vulnerable.
Yes.
And still confident.
Yes.
But also just like have people that you can be like, listen, I really need advice on this, you know? And I think that's something that's underutilized and under talked about.
Huge. And I think, you don't, I think the thing that gets hard is you want to be vulnerable in the right spaces, because you need to access information or advice or help or support from the right people. So to me, when someone goes on Instagram and starts crying and being vulnerable, I'm not sure that that's where they're going to get the help and the support they need. They're going to get a lot of positive commentary, but to me, that's not where you're going to get actually what you need to get better. And so for me, it's like these rooms with other founders where you're like, oh my God, this was so hard, and this, and what did you do with that? That's the place where you can get the most support. But if you're like, everything's good all the time and I'm perfect and I figured it out every day, like, I don't think that works.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I interviewed Kristen Olszewski from Nomadica Wines last summer, and she said, only take advice from people whose lives you want. And I'm going to expand about that on it. Only take criticism from people whose lives you want.
I love that piece of advice. And I want to add in too, like, I think that can relate to so many things, like whether it's life, personal, but also in work. And I remember when I was working in corporate America, before I started my running interview show and my content creation journey and business, I was working in advertising, and I worked at great advertising agencies. I had great teams, but I remember looking at the really senior people at the company and saying to myself, like, that's just not who I aspire to be. And it was nothing, wrong with their career path, because obviously these people have made it to really high up positions in these, massive firms, and they have incredible work. I just remember thinking like, that's not what I want to be. So I'm in the wrong spot.
Yeah. I think it's always good to do that check and be like, do I want that? Do I want how they're living? Do I want, and just find the role models who have that and see where those patterns are and how you can mimic that. Because I think you get stuck on what you think it should be, and then you see it actually play out and it's like, oh shit, I don't actually want that.
Let's talk a little bit about the purpose behind your book, and then also a fearless decision you made recently that you were scared to do at the time.
I think the purpose of the book was that we let fear inform and decide our decisions in life, in business, and work, and that you don't finish the book and you're like, I have no fear. You finish the book and you're like, you know what? I'm scared, but here I go. I'm diving in. And so it is a business book with principles that you can hold on to in those moments of taking a lot of risks. And I'm telling you my horror stories so you can feel better about those risks.
Was there an emotional chapter for you that you had to write?
Was there an emotional chapter?
Or a chapter that you were like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm telling people
this? No, because I'm one of those people that I probably say too much.
You are an open book in the best way.
I get in trouble
No, you
for
can
it.
never. Yeah, I get that. I get that. You can never say too much. So you're doing a ton. Real Housewives of New York. Let's touch on it a little bit. Why did you decide to do Real Housewives of New York? How did the decision come to be?
Talk about a fearless decision.
Yeah.
At the time, I felt like we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. We've always taken risks to be in front and like in touch with our customer. I thought at the time, the naive part of me, that being able to have the customer see another side of me, what I thought again was she's going to see me at the office. She'll see my family life. Like she'll see all these facets that like you don't necessarily see just on Instagram. And to be part of a cast again, at the time that was all entrepreneurial women who are self-made. No one in the cast was on there because of their rich husband. So I thought, wow, this could be a cool example for women to see. And then it wasn't that. It became, an old pattern and an old format that works for Bravo, does not work for me. And so it was a decision, I guess, to do it and to walk away were both fearless decisions because it wasn't a positive place to be. Not that I thought by signing on, we're going to just be positive and happy all the time, but it became very negative. And that's not what I want or need to have in my life right now.
Did any of the prior Housewives of New York or any other franchise give you advice going into the show?
So I had been on Bethany's podcast a couple years ago and I saw her at an event when I still hadn't made my decision. And I was like, so listen, this is what's up. And she's like, don't attend a party that's already over. And I was like, okay, good to know, Bethany. Thank you. And then I did the show and I saw her afterwards. She's like, I told you you shouldn't have done it. Look what happened.
That's so funny. So she knew, she was like, this is not going to be.
She knew that she and the OGs, like they did it best. And that was perfect for its time. And, it needs to be reinvented.
Was it good for your brand?
It was great for the brand. It was great. Like I talk about Madonna reinvention, keeping interest, brand awareness is up 20% year over decade. The customer who grew up with me got to see me again. New customers got to see me. And there were people who'd never heard of me who were like, who's this random woman? Let me find out more. So it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I don't regret it at all.
Can't live with regrets.
You can't live with regrets.
Also, that's amazing. You're so right. It does open you up to this whole new audience. And I'm sure they were like, she seems cool. Like, let me see what her brand is all about.
Some of them said that. Some of them said a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
But that's for the trolls.
Had you ever struggled with like negativity before?
Yeah. So I had a taste of negativity very early on in the early days of social media in the comments section of a website. People went for me. And I remember this was like 2006. And I remember crying on the couch to my husband, like, people won't stop talking about me. And it was really criticizing the brand because at the time you didn't really know who I was. And so then we've had a lot of just great positivity. And I saw a taste of it during COVID when I did an Instagram live with someone who was getting canceled and the trolling on her feed. I was like, oh my God, I feel terrible for her. Like the people are coming for her so hard. Like this is awful. Like I just want to give her a hug. So then I went back to my positive land. And then I took a firm stance before, like I obviously knew, okay, there is gossip, there is negativity surrounding these shows, block and delete. Like if you are a troll, you're not part of my world. And this is my space and I control it. I might not own my piece of the internet, but I can control a lot of it. And that was the tactic, like block and delete. Like, I'm not here for it. Like you're miserable. You're in your parents' basement. Like go have happy life. And the trolls did come for me. And you know what? The best revenge is success. And I was just like, I'm going to continue to succeed and to put positivity out there and to just keep doing what I love and showing it off, and everyone else can suck it.
And share your values, and like you have such good values. What are you excited about that's to come? Like what's keeping you motivated right now? What do you have going on?
Well, I have been working on celebrating our anniversary like all year long. So we're halfway in. We have a really exciting collaboration coming out in the fall. We also have a new category launch in the fall. to bring Rebecca Minkoff to even more women. And yeah, and it's summer. So I'm going to take my hot girl summer.
Lastly, where can we find you, follow you, keep up with everything you've got going on?
At Rebecca Minkoff, at Becky Minkoff for a personal look. You can listen to my podcast, Super Women with Rebecca Minkoff. You can buy Fearless wherever books are sold. And if you want even more, you can go to my TikTok for some great entertainment.
Well, thank you so much for being with me. Seriously, this was amazing.
Thank you for having me.